Hi everybody, my name is David and I am your host here on the Cartoon Fortress channel, and this is the first episode of Letterboxd Digest. Letterboxd Digest is a series that I will be featuring once per month on this channel, in which I will highlight 3 films that I have watched over the past month that I have logged on Letterboxd. Now, if you don't already follow me there, I can be found at Cartoon Fortress, and you can get a really good idea for maybe my more eclectic taste. I'm definitely all over the place with the different types of films that I watch, but you can definitely get a good idea of what I'm watching by following me on there. And the aim here is to just pick 3 of the films that I've watched just as kind of highlights of my month, and then share my thoughts with you on those particular films. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So 2 of these films that I'm going to be talking about today are from the 70s, and then the last one is from just a few years ago. So we'll go ahead and start out with a Scream Factory title that I brought into the collection not too long ago. And this is from 1977 and is directed by Elliot Silverstein. And this is The Car. Now, this was a really fun film. I'm a really big fan of 70s made-for-television movies and kind of that general aesthetic. A couple of my favorites would be Steven Spielberg's Duel, which I have just absolutely endless love for. I would love to do a video on the channel at some point really focusing in on that film from Steven Spielberg, because I think it is a grossly overlooked, really, really wonderful Steven Spielberg film. And another one that I like to go back to pretty frequently is Bad Ronald. I've actually watched that one with my son, my 12-year-old son, and he enjoys it quite a bit. And we usually come back to that one, I'd say, once per year, usually around Halloween time. But it's that and Duel are 2 great products of 70s television films. And The Car is a lot of fun. So again, this is from 1977. And Elliot Silverstein, who directed this, he actually worked a lot in television and actually directed 4 episodes of my favorite TV show of all time, The Twilight Zone. Of course, the original from Rod Serling. The episodes he directed there are Spur of the Moment, The Trade-Ins, The Passers-By, and The Obsolete Man. My favorite of those episodes would probably be The Obsolete Man, and that's followed closely by The Passers-By. Some really great episodes of The Twilight Zone, actually. So, so that's Elliot Silverstein. And also, this is starring James Brolin. Yes, the father of Josh Brolin. I am not familiar with James Brolin with his work, and so this is actually the first film that I saw, that I've seen with him in it. And so, obviously, Josh Brolin is a huge star. We've seen him in many films over the years. A couple of my favorites are, of course, The Goonies. 80s classic, and then I love the Coen Brothers film No Country for Old Men, and so that's a couple of the Josh Brolin highlights for me. And then this also has Kathleen Lloyd, John Marley, and Kim Richards. Now, Kim Richards I know most from my childhood watching Escape to and Return from Witch Mountain, or Return to Witch Mountain. And she's also in Assault on Precinct 13, the John Carpenter film. So it's really great to see her in here as well. And so we've got a really great, just a little bit over an hour and a half long running film. And this film focuses on a small desert town, and they're basically being stalked by this killer car. And there's some really great sequences. So this film, just because of the budget restraints, like it definitely has that small budget feel. But for me, and just the aesthetic that I prefer, I find it even a little bit charming. I mean, I love the smaller budget fill stuff, as opposed to, you know, films that get $200-300 million budgets. That's just my personal preference. But yeah, you definitely see and feel that shoestring budget with this particular film. But there's a lot of great characters here, with James Brolin really being the lead. And for me, I brought up Duel a few minutes ago, and for me, this feels like Duel at multiple points. Of course, you have the car here, and then you have the semi-truck in Duel, and you could also compare it, I guess, to John Carpenter's Christine, which obviously came after this. But one of the differences, I guess, between Duel and this film is that here the antagonist remains a little bit more, it's a little bit more ambiguous, because in Duel you actually see the hand of the truck driver outside the window waving on Dennis Weaver's character, and so you know that there is a human inside of the truck, whereas in the car, we don't get answers like that. And so there's a lot of points and a lot of evidence pointing to the idea that this truck is kind of demonically possessed, and that something is inhuman is driving this car. And there are several sequences where the townspeople are being picked off, and at one point there are a group of school children and teachers who make their way to a cemetery. They're kind of near a dirt track, and they're practicing a school program or something of that nature, and so the car is there, and it's coming to run all of them down, and so they all scatter, and they scatter to a nearby cemetery, and where they're trying to protect themselves from the car, and the car will not pass over into the actual cemetery grounds, and so that's part of the evidence that points to that there's something kind of otherworldly about this car. And so there's a few sequences like that, and the car running people down on the street, and so it definitely has a more horror movie type feel to it in that regard. But there's some really great shots in this film, actually, and one in particular, without giving too much away, because I want you to be able to enjoy this film spoiler free if you haven't seen it, but there's one particular shot that I really, really enjoyed, and it's from the point of view of a living room looking out the living room window onto the street, and you see the car making its way very quickly toward the house, and that's as far as I'll go with telling you about that scene. But that, for me, was my favorite shot in the entire film. Really, really well done. And actually kind of shocking almost. I mean, especially again for the budget that they were working with. I know that this was a bigger budget shot in the film, and so it was really, the payoff was really great in that scene, and just kind of how much it drove the tension and everything going on, because it happens in the second half of the film. And so anyways, I found that really, really effective. And then the third act of the film, James Brolin, he is uh, he's a local sheriff or works at the police station. And in the third act, it culminates to this point where they are, him and his um, co-workers, friends, they're all getting together, and they've figured out a way to sort of defeat the car. And that's another parallel that I found actually to Duel, the way that the point that Duel comes to in the end of that film. It definitely felt similar in some ways, but I feel like this film holds its own as well. And in the climactic point where they try and take out the car, there are some special effects that definitely don't maybe technically don't work super well. It's very kind of cheesy looking, but again, that's kind of what we get with this lower budget type of film. And I want to go back actually to the beginning of the film. I'm just thinking of sequences that I really enjoyed, and actually the opening sequence to this film was really effective. And in the extra features on the disc, actually they talk to Melody Thomas Scott, who there's a boy and a girl in the opening scene, and you get the idea that they're on a date, they're on a bike ride, and they are biking through the canyon, which was actually shot in my home state of Utah, which is really cool. I believe it was just outside Zion National Park, which I have visited many times. Anyways, there is a really effective sequence shot at the very beginning of the film there, with them on their bikes, and Melody Thomas Scott talks about the stunt work and working with the director, and tensions were pretty high between the two of them, and what they were able to pull off though in filming that sequence. Elliot Silverstein was really happy with what he was able to get on camera. So you'll have to watch the film and see what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to jump back to the beginning of the film there to say that I enjoyed that opening sequence. But overall, this is a really great kind of made-for-TV budget type film, and one that I will definitely keep coming back to. I'm really happy to have this in the collection, and it was not too expensive. It was about, I want to say I spent probably $15 on this one or so, and really happy to have this, The Car from 1977. Now, next up, I am a really big fan of animation. I love collecting, especially vintage animation. I grew up a really big fan of Disney movies, Disney animation, the classics. And in fact, all growing up for me, my dream was to be a Disney animator, an artist. And so that was something I held really close all growing up. And so I've always just naturally gravitated towards animated titles. And I always love when I find a new one to add to this collection, to my collection. And in this case, this is an older film. So this is from 1971. And MVD Rewind Collection put this out, and this is The Point. Now, this is directed by Fred Wolf, who was definitely a big part of my childhood because he had production credits, executive producer credits on shows like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he worked on stuff with Disney like DuckTales. That was really his kind of the bread and butter of his career. But here, he directed a feature, and this was written by Harry Nilsson, who, outside of his writing credits, he actually did the soundtrack for films like Paul Thomas Anderson's Punch Drunk Love, Contact with Jodie Foster, and then Goodfellas with Martin Scorsese. So that was really interesting to see kind of the wide range of his career with writing credits and then these soundtrack credits. And then the voice cast here, we have Ringo Starr, Paul Frees, and Mike Lookenland. And of course, Mike Lookinland is Bobby from the Brady Bunch. That's what he's going to be most known for. And here, what we have is a story where a father tells his son the story of our main character here, Oblio, and he is born and being raised in this place where everybody has a point. Literally, they have pointed heads. Everything is pointed. And so everything has a point except for Oblio, and who is just kind of a normal looking kid with a normal, or what we call normal, round head. And the Count, the evil Count, talks the king into banishing him and his dog. And so Oblio and his dog are banished and basically out in the middle of nowhere. And it basically at that point becomes a kind of an Alice in Wonderland almost type of adventure where there's really strange characters, there's really wonderful music. And I love the art direction in this, not because it is the best, most polished looking art that I've ever seen, animation that I've seen, but because it has a very organic feel to it. And I almost feel at times when I'm watching this film that, and I've seen it a couple of times now, I almost get the feeling that I'm watching an animated artist's sketchbook. So there's some things that are just kind of really crudely drawn and colored and shaded in and inked, and but I like that. I like that look and that aesthetic, and I think that really works here. And then that in companionship with just the really interesting, fun characters and the great music, it makes for a really great experience. And I don't want to give away the ending of the story, but Oblio attempts to find his way, and I'll leave it at that. It's if I talk anymore, I will give away too much of the story, but really memorable. And Ringo Starr. Now, Ringo Starr, obviously of the Beatles. This was made in 1971. The Yellow Submarine was made just a few years earlier in 1968. And this does multiple times remind me of the Yellow Submarine. And so I think this actually makes a good companion piece to the Yellow Submarine if you're looking to pair something together with this for maybe a double bill. I think Yellow Submarine and The Point would make a really great double feature. And I actually watched this with one of my younger sons who is, he's 8 years old, and he was really emotionally impacted by the story here, and really enjoyed watching this, and I enjoyed watching this with him. So this is definitely something that you can enjoy with the family, and I think is a really interesting piece of animation history. And here you can see, I'll just pop this up here. This is more meant to be a review of the film, but you can see here there is quite a bit of extra features to enjoy, and there's actually a mini poster on the inside here as well. So this is a great overall package from the MVD Rewind collection, and I highly recommend it. Now, the last film that I'm going to be talking about, this takes us from 1971 all the way to 2014. And the edition that I have here is a very recent Criterion edition coming in at spine number 1025, and that is Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel. Now, Wes Anderson really seems to be one of those directors that's very polarizing. You either really love his work or you really hate it. It seems like that's just the consensus in the community, is that you're either on one side of the fence or you're on the other. There's no really kind of middle ground, it seems like, with his work. And I fall on the side of really enjoying his work. The first of his films that I ever saw was Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I saw in theaters and absolutely loved. I love the vintage feel to it and the stop motion, and just really, really worked for me. And so I began to explore his work. And he's got a really great relationship with the Criterion Collection. So it's great to see that relationship continue, and for us to see his work coming to the Criterion Collection in these really nice editions. I'm hoping that we see Isle of Dogs before too long. But for now, we did get the Grand Budapest Hotel. And again, this is from 2014. And the cinematographer, which is a regular collaborator with Wes Anderson, is Robert D. Yeoman. And his work with Wes Anderson is really fantastic. I love the look and feel of Anderson's films, and really the thing that stands out most to me about his work is the symmetry, the placement of characters. And I feel when I'm watching his films that I'm being told a really interesting story, and it's like I'm watching the pages of a storybook as I watch the film. And that's something that I really appreciate, and something that really is prominent, or at least was for me when I was watching this film. It's really interesting looking, and it stars Ralph Fiennes, F. Murray Abraham, Saoirse Ronan, Jeff Goldblum, Willem Dafoe, Adrian Brody, among others. And as always, the characters are super interesting. And the basic story here is that a writer encounters the owner of an aging high-class hotel, and he tells him of his early years and how he served as a lobby boy and how he came to own the hotel. And so we have the story being told, so we're flashed back and kind of told the story of the Grand Budapest, and again his coming to eventually own the hotel. And there's a family involved where the mother passes away, and Adrian Brody plays one of her sons, and it comes to blows with with the family and the concierge of the Grand Budapest, played by Ralph Fiennes, and kind of how everything is supposed to be split up, who's supposed to have what, and that's the kind of the main part of the story. But again, I don't want to get into spoilers in these reviews. These are meant to just be kind of basic reviews, but it's a really enjoyable story, and really cool set pieces and just great performances all around. For me, in terms of Wes Anderson's filmography, I mean, this ranks up there for me. Fantastic Mr. Fox would definitely be my favorite, and then probably Moonrise Kingdom, and then this is probably right in the maybe third or fourth place for the films that I've seen from him. I really enjoyed Bottle Rocket as well. I was not crazy about the Royal Tenenbaums the first time that I saw it, but now that I've experienced a lot more of his work, and it's been several years ago that I watched the Royal Tenenbaums, I think I'm going to be able to appreciate it more now, again, that I've seen more of his film. So I'll definitely double back and go watch that one again. But really engaging story, really funny dialogue. I mean, it's just very much a Wes Anderson film is what you're getting here. And I really love the Criterion package here. I've actually done an unboxing video of this edition on the channel, so if you want to go back and watch that, you can. There's all kinds of goodies on the inside of this set, and I was happy to be able to unbox that on the channel. So that is the Grand Budapest Hotel. So that is 3 titles that I was really excited about this month. And as I said, I will be continuing this series forward. This was just episode 1, but this is something that I want to do every month, where I just feature 3 titles and talk about those. And I would love to know in the comments, actually, if you've seen any of these films and what your thoughts are. Maybe give me your mini review and let me know if you've enjoyed any of these. But that is going to do it for episode 1. And if you enjoyed this video or found this helpful or entertaining, I definitely invite you to hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you again really soon.